Sweet Christmas. Good morning and welcome to Whenever You Are. I am Bandit Haze, and today I'm going to be talking about Netflix and Marvel's latest TV show, Luke Cage, which, by the way, as it turns out, absolutely no relation to Nicolas Cage or Johnny Cage. So Luke Cage is the latest in the Marvel Netflix collaboration after Daredevil, after Jessica Jones. I've just spent the last couple of days binge watching all 13 episodes and I regret nothing. So I figured I'd come in here and do a lekker bit of a review for you guys. Now here's the thing, I'm not going to go through any key plot points or major story arcs or any kind of big spoilers like that, but that being said, I am talking about the whole series, so I may say a few things here and there that straddles that line just a little bit, maybe a little bit too close for some, but hopefully nothing that ruins the whole series for you. Now I'm going to start with the things that I didn't like about Luke Cage because that is a much shorter list of things. Now this first one, to be fair, is me just being a little bit nitpicky because there were some, and I do stress just some occasions where it felt like it was dragging on just a little bit. Now that's a problem that a lot of shows have because they're trying to tell a story over a series rather than just compact everything into a few hours. And to be fair, you do need time to build the story and the characters so that when things do happen, it feels a lot more relevant. And finding that balance between building the stories and the characters but not dragging it out too much is a difficult thing to achieve that not many, if any, shows actually do. And the times that I felt the story dragged on a little bit, you might think is totally fine because it's going to be different for different people. So yeah, it's a little bit of a nitpick, plus it didn't really happen that many times. When it did happen, it didn't last that long, so all in all, not really a big deal. Now the other thing I didn't like was Theo Rossi's portrayal of Shades. He looked awkward, he felt awkward, the accent seemed awkward, the whole character seemed awkward. Everything about a character, or at least most things about a character, just seemed awkward. Now to be fair, Luke Cage is not a comic line that I'm familiar with. It's not one that I've read. So perhaps that is how Shades is supposed to be. Maybe that's just exactly what he's like. The shame of it for me is that Theo Rossi's portrayal of Juice in Sons of Anarchy was one of my favorite things about that show. So seeing him in this and then him just come across as awkward, a little bit disappointing for me. Now, onto what I did like. In short, pretty much everything else. From the opening scenes of the first episodes, you do get a real old school feel to it, but while doing that, it is also very clear that it's set in modern times. But Luke Cage being born out of that whole 70s blaxploitation era, it does definitely pay homage to that. And you also get a few cool references throughout as well, which, you know, a little bit hit and miss, but in my opinion, much more hit than miss. And even Shades and all his awkwardness, you can tell it's just the absolute epitome of 70s blaxploitation villain. Now the music, now the OST music was okay, it was fine, nothing particularly special, it was adequate. But what I really liked was how they handled the licensed music. So that's the thing, one of the crime bosses in the show, Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes, played by Mahershala Ali, owns a nightclub called Harlem's Paradise. Now, as I'm sure you know, nightclubs, especially those owned by gangsters, often have live music playing. So what they'll do is have a musical act playing in the club, which would also serve as the licensed music for the TV show. And these would be old school acts like Faith Evans to old school acts like the Delphonics. And what they'll do is they'll edit it so that you know that the band is playing in the club, but then they'll cut to another scene where you'll see some of the story developing whilst the music is still playing. Now as I'm talking about the music, I gotta mention this. I think it was the 3rd or 4th episode where they had Jidenna playing Long Live the Chief, and apart from the management and maybe some other staff, the nightclub was empty, so it was probably supposed to be a practice session. But the way it was shot was so awesome, with Cottonmouth standing on the balcony and looking down, because it gave the impression, at least to me in a way, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a practice session. Maybe, just maybe, this was actually a private show, and it really gave a sense that Cottonmouth has power. But does he have ultimate power? You gotta watch the show for that. And speaking of music still, look out for Method Man, because his whole involvement with Luke Cage was just woo. Now, probably my favourite thing about Luke Cage was Alfre Woodard as Mariah Dillard. Now, here's the thing about Alfre Woodard. She's actually the only person to appear in 2 different Marvel Cinematic Universe productions as 2 different characters. She was in Captain America Civil War as Miriam, the mother whose son died, and now Luke Cage as Councilwoman Mariah Dillard. But I would put forward that she actually plays 3 characters, because Councilwoman Mariah Dillard is the absolute definition of Two-Face, and Alfre Woodard absolutely nails them both. And that's not a spoiler, by the way. You know she's Two-Face from very, very early on in the show. But as they develop her character, you learn about who she is and why she is the way she is. You get a little bit of a history. Every time it's just wow. And what I really liked about when they showed her history was the fact that she wasn't actually the focus of that backstory. It was Cottonmouth, her cousin. So when you see her come through, I don't want to give her any spoilers, when you see her story come through a bit more, I was like, you know, I did not see that coming. And as they're developing her character throughout the series, she goes through a transformation of sorts. So you could say that by the end of Luke Cage, Alfre Woodard has actually played 4 characters in the MCU. But she done such a fantastic job, and for me was easily the standout. There's loads of things I liked about the Luke Cage series, but I'm just going to mention this as the last one, and that is they weren't afraid to address the elephant in the room. So let's keep it real. Luke Cage is a series about a bulletproof black man in Harlem, New York, being made at a time where police brutality towards black men is all over the news. Now, they could have easily made that the focus of the whole series, and I'm sure all the social justice warrior types would have loved it, but they chose not to, and in my opinion, that was the better choice to make. But in choosing not to make that the focus, they also chose not to ignore it. So they did address the issue, and in addressing it, they didn't undermine the importance of it. And I think to take something like police brutality towards black men, which is such a ubiquitous issue that you always heard about on the news, to take something like that and have it as a relatively small part of a bigger story without trivializing it, that seems like a tricky thing to do, but they pulled it off really well. And not only that, they also weren't afraid to address the fact that police brutality isn't just a white cop beating on a black guy. There's more to it than that. And further to that, just with the series in general, they clearly weren't afraid to address race and various issues with race in the community, but at the same time, it never really comes across that Luke Cage is a black man, as it is that Luke Cage is a man who just happens to be black. And I think that's a very important line to distinguish between, because very few productions, in my opinion, get that. Which, by the way, includes very many productions by black people. But anyway, to surmise this video, Luke Cage Season 1 is a fantastic series. I really enjoyed it. I think a few people are saying that this is the best of the Marvel Netflix series so far. Not sure I'd agree with that. Personally, I would say that Daredevil Season 2 is the best so far, mainly because of the interactions between Daredevil and the Punisher. But Luke Cage Season 1, definitely up there. Definitely worth your time. If you have a Netflix subscription, check it out. If you don't have a Netflix subscription, get a Netflix subscription and binge watch it like I did. Totally worth your while. And that is what I think of Luke Cage Season 1 Villagers. What do you think? Always forward, or you need to put some money in a swear jar? Let me know down below, and if you liked this video, give it a like and share it amongst your friends. If you did not like it, then give it a dislike and share it amongst your enemies. Either way, let me know your reasons in the comments. Subscribe if you have not already. Thank you for watching, and until whenever, if ever, niggas fighting over ranks, niggas wanna be the king, but long live the chief. And she's got her cleavage out on display. 99% of the time, you're going to be looking at her tits. The other 1% is when you're blinking.